expectations. The Exorcist Believer, well, there's been loads of stuff coming out about it this week. So it turns out that Universal actually spent $400 million to acquire the rights to the release of it so they could make a new trilogy. It's come out. It's not done well. It's done pretty badly. They're expecting a 28 million debut, and yeah, it's not going well. I didn't go see it, Greg. I was on the edge of it. I was like, do I go? Do I not go? And then they posted a clip online of a line from it, and I was just like, I'm going to give it a miss. So
Well, it got terrible reviews and a terrible audience score. So there's going to be no
yeah,
legs on this movie. It's really bad.
and Scott Mendelson actually brought up a really good point talking about the whole $400 million for the rights thing. Obviously, Universal, they've tried to capture lightning in a bottle again, like they did with Halloween, that first Halloween requel, where they got David Gordon Green in, they got legacy characters from the franchise, and they just hit the ground running with it. So Mendelsohn was saying that Exorcist, it's not Halloween in terms of IP. For example, he brought up having Ellen Burstyn come back. It's not the same as bringing back Jamie Lee Curtis fighting Michael Myers again.
Completely agree.
And yeah, The Exorcist just, I one of the greatest movies of all time. I think that first film. It's not just one of the best horrors of all time. It's one of the best movies of all time. But the sequels and what followed it, they don't have the legacy that the Halloween sequels do. I mean, how many times have they rebooted the Halloween universe? There's been like so many different timelines, remakes, requels that ignore all the sequels and stuff like that.
Laurie
And
Strode's a legacy character, whereas Ellen Burstyn's I wouldn't call her like a legacy. It's a major character, but it's not. It's just not the same level where she carried through the franchise.
yeah, and I think they really tried to just think, how do we do that again? We buy The Exorcist for 400 million from Morgan Creek, who must be laughing about it, rolling in pools of money. We get we get David Gordon Green back. We get a legacy character back. We make it a direct sequel to the first film. Kind of ignore the other sequels, and yeah, it just didn't work out for them. I think something that we talk about quite a lot on this show is horror movies and how cheap they are to make. And if you're paying 400 million out the gate, I don't think you're ever going to make that back, unless it's like, a massive, massive hit.
Because that was just for the rights. That was just to get damn, that's a lot.
So that's before they've ever shot anything, before they've ever sat down and cast anyone or wrote a line of dialogue. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And I think they just needed to really analyze the situation and see what was going on. Like, I mean, The Exorcist was so much of a cultural movement at the time as well. It was very much a sort of test your faith film where a lot of people, like we've talked about this in the case of Sound of Freedom and stuff, where when the church backs a film, it gets so much more money. For example, something like Passion of the Christ or something. Lots of people come out to see it. And this was obviously set in the 70s before all the Catholic Church scandals and stuff like that. And religion was really, really a bankable thing. And going to see a movie where it's about the devil possessing a girl, it's almost testing your faith. And I feel The Exorcist will have renewed a lot of people's faith as well. So it was very much a cultural thing, sort of, can you survive the movie about the devil? You hear about all the curses and stuff. Back then, mind-blowing, crazy thing, insane. These days, there's hundreds of possession movies, and yeah, paying that much money for that.
We had the Pope's Exorcist this year.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, it's so overdone. Obviously, the Exorcist was such a big film. I think it got 10 Oscar nominations or something, and one of those was Best Picture. And people have just been trying to redo that and live up to that again, and it's not going to happen. And I think getting David Gordon Green on board was just stupid anyway.
The second I heard that, I was like, dude, you don't want to get a guy who's like over this shit. It's like I think John Watts leaving Fantastic Four was so smart of him to do that. I can't imagine going from Spider-Man. It's like David Yates did all the freaking Harry Potter movies. he's like, all right, I guess I'll do Fantastic Beasts now. You know, like you're
Yeah.
just gonna. And while I actually like that first movie, you're just gonna lose that magic touch. Your passion gets diluted over time. You know, like, oh god, I got to start this all over again. I gotta try. He had to have. He should have probably done something more in between before just making the jump to be
Yeah.
a producer director, essentially. Like, all right, I'll get this going. You know?
Yeah. And just hearing all this stuff this weekend, it put me off wanting to see it. There's obviously audience members that didn't go to see it either because the movie's not made that much.